Dom Kalasih. Kalasih. I hope I've got that right. Who was the Chief Executive Officer of Transport in New Zealand. Kalasih, have I got that right, Dom?
Kalasih. Thanks, Michael.
Oh, for Pete's sake, it doesn't say that in my thing.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
that's because Josh hasn't put it in properly. Kalasih. Thank you. Yes, it is. Josh? No, is that right? Well, I've got here. Chief Executive Officer of Transport in New Zealand. You're the main trucking body in New Zealand. Is that right?
That's right, Michael.
And you've got this decision yesterday. Was it what you expected?
Yes. And look, Michael, I mean, we think actually there's a good case that New Zealanders actually should have more, not less, confidence in the fuel supply.
What, from not having Marsden Point?
Correct, yeah.
Can you explain that to me?
Look, firstly, ultimately, the refinery closed down because it wasn't competitive, right? But also, in terms of supply resilience, right, Marsden produced about pretty much 100% of our jet fuel,
yep.
About 60 to 70% of the other products, the other main refined products, diesel and petrol, right? And so, in fact, the old model created actually a single point failure, right? So in the
How
previous
did it
model,
create a single point failure, that model? Because it was owned by the private sector, wasn't it?
It was owned by the four major oilcos, yeah.
Yeah.
The failure point was, if that refinery broke down, right, we would not have any jet in the country, right? Because that was producing 100% of the jet, right?
Yeah, but at the moment we're utterly reliant upon importing that into the country, and we've had problems with bad avgas coming into the country as well, haven't we, as a part of that?
Look, having product quality issues is something completely different, and that can happen regardless, right?
Well, it didn't happen when it was being refined at Marsden Point.
Oh, look, I was in the fuel sector for over a decade, looking after the logistics chain, and there were definitely product quality issues with stuff that came out of Marsden from time to time, right? That's just one of the risks of any processing plant. It's not saying it's a bad plant or anything, right? But the realities are, when you look at the economies of scale of refining, that was trying to compete with refineries that were producing 10 or 15 times more than it did. So from a cost competitive perspective, it was always going to struggle.
So are you saying that we are in a position where we are never going to ever compete, and that we are always going to be reliant upon importing refined product into this country?
In terms of cost effectiveness, I believe so. And for the sheer reason we just don't have the economies of scale.
Because it's not just refined stuff, is it? It's also CO2. I mean, when they closed it in 2022, they were the one remaining. They were the biggest producer of CO2 in this country, and you'll remember that there was a shortage of that in this country as well.
Yeah, look, I accept that, but I think it's all a issue of what are the biggest issues that you want to solve, right? And in terms of supply resilience and cost, right, they were the biggest issues, and they are better now than they were before, right? And also, because what was happening was crude was coming in, it was getting refined there, and then there was coastal ships moving it around to most of the ports where there are bulk terminal storage facilities, right? Look, now the product is coming just straight from whichever refinery has been selected, straight into the port. And that's actually meant there's a higher frequency of boats, so there's a reduced lead time, and that actually gives greater flexibility and agility for those fuel suppliers to respond to demand changes. Whereas previously that was quite an issue too.
All right. So you're not shedding any tears as far as you're concerned. Yesterday's report just spelt out an inevitability, and you believe that the status quo as it exists today is better than what happened in the past anyhow.
Yep.
Okay. I'm interested in, though, something else to do with Transporting New Zealand. You're the main trucking body there. The state of the roads in this country, it's not what I was going to talk to you about, but you'll have some views on it. There is, it has to be said that it's pretty spotty throughout the country, and we've had a plethora just prior to the election. It was an election issue, believe it or not, of potholes and things like that. I guess your answer from the trucking point of view would be, well, it's not our fault, because even if we do contribute to the state of the roads and their decline in New Zealand, we're paying significant amounts of money through road user charges, yeah?
Well, we would say that, but let me assure you, I mean, independent. So the Ministry of Transport's own study, which was released, I think it was June last year, that's the Transport Surface Transport Costs and Charges study, that showed that, in fact, the largest trucks by far pay the largest proportion of their costs.
Right. So this you don't. I mean, there is a large. Well, I remember when Tony Friedlander, I think, used to have your job. Do you remember him?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I know Tony.
Yeah, yeah. He was. Oh, sorry. I was in caucus with him, and then he flitted from the National Party and ended up as chief executive of you guys. So he must have been your predecessor somewhere along the line, Dom. But his argument always was, because at that time it was expanding the truck fleet in this country, and I think it was allowing 18-wheelers. That was the big issue then. What's the maximum number of wheelers you can put on the road now?
Oh, gee, I'll have to do a quick count up. So 2, 4, 12. There's 12 on just a truck alone.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we call an eight. We call it an 8-wheel truck, but it's actually got 12 tyres. Right. And in fact, interestingly, arguably that's got too many axles just to make sure we do the least damage we can to our roads. Right. And then trailers have 20 axles on a trailer, 20 tyres, sorry, 20 tyres.
So it's up to 32.
Trailer, yep, 32.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, because I can remember the argument was with 18-wheelers were going to destroy New Zealand roads and how dreadful they would be for safety in this country, and now you're up to 32. Gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. Listen, this is the next
Michael,
point. Yeah, carry on.
Can I just put some of that in context, though? Right, and this goes for fuel use as well, right? Because people think trucks are big and they, use a lot of fuel and they put all this weight on the roads, right? Those big trucks are generally carrying a payload getting up somewhere near 30 tonne, right? You think about a car, right, which probably uses maybe somewhere between a fifth and a tenth of the fuel, right? And generally it has a payload of a couple of people, right? So, trucks are big, but they're good at moving things productively, which then flows through to the good for New Zealand because it keeps transport costs down.
Okay. Yep. So you're saying that, it does appear, though, I mean, trucks are big these days. They're difficult to pass, particularly on our state highways, which still, despite, various projects, are relatively narrow and in imperfect order. And yet I guess you would argue, are logging trucks under your purview as well, Dom?
Oh, it's absolutely.
Right. So there's been a plethora of them in recent years as well, as they open up, as we mill the forests and send the raw product to the ports. The number of accidents, though, has declined over that time. Why is that? Is that because of good driving by you lot, or is that because New Zealanders are a bit more risk averse?
Michael, I think there's no silver bullet to improving road safety performance, right? And even the performance can be pretty volatile. But what I can say is, there's been lots of improvements in lots of areas. The roads have improved, the vehicles have improved, truck operators' management systems have improved, police enforcement systems have improved, So all of that, I think, has contributed to the improvement in road safety.